I want to tell this story slowly, the way it still echoes inside my chest. Some memories don't rush. They sit quietly inside you, like folded letters you're scared to open. You know what's inside, but still you hesitate. My story begins on a warm afternoon. I remember I was watering my plants the same way I do every day. The sun was gentle, and for a moment, life felt calm. You know those rare moments where everything is still, and you almost believe nothing bad could ever happen. That was exactly where I was standing. Then the phone rang. At first, it was just a sound. But later, I would realize that this ring, this small, ordinary thing, marked the beginning of a long emotional journey for me. A journey that taught me what love is and what it is not. It was my daughter-in-law calling. Her voice always carried a softness. Even on days she was tired, even on days she was hurting, she still spoke gently. "Mama, are you home?" she asked. I remember I smiled. "Yes, Beta, I'm home," I said. She had always called me Mama, even before the wedding. That was the kind of heart she had, always giving love without calculating anything in return. She stayed silent for a few seconds, then she breathed out. "Can I come over for a little while?" "Of course," I said. "Do you want me to come get you?" "No," she whispered. "I'll manage." I didn't think too much back then. If I had known what she was really carrying inside her, I would have driven to her house myself. I would have sat her in my car gently. I would have held her hands the entire way. But I didn't know. Sometimes life gives us signs, but they are small, quiet signs, and if we are too caught up in our own routines, we miss them. She arrived 20 minutes later. I still remember the moment she stepped inside. She tried to smile, but something about her felt dimmer. Not broken, just tired, like someone who had been carrying a heavy bag for too many miles. I made her tea the way she liked it, light milk, extra cardamom. She sat on the couch quietly, holding the cup but not drinking from it. "Are you okay?" I finally asked. She looked at me with eyes I will never forget. "Mama, can I tell you something without you getting angry?" That sentence alone was enough to tell me something was seriously wrong. When someone begins with a request like that, it means they've been holding pain inside for too long, afraid of being judged or misunderstood. "You can tell me anything," I said gently. "I'm here." She nodded, took a slow breath, and looked down at her hands. "It's about your son." My heart tightened a little, not because I imagined the worst, but because I had been sensing something lately. A strange distance, a restlessness in him, something I couldn't quite name. I put my hand over hers. "Tell me." She finally looked up. "He's been going out a lot," she said. "Not for work, not for errands, just driving around." "With people I don't know?" I narrowed my eyes softly. "What people?" she swallowed. "Girls, Mama." The world didn't crash, it didn't thunder or break open, but inside me something went quiet, too quiet. "Mama, I don't know what to do," she whispered. "I don't want to accuse him, I don't want to fight, but I'm scared. I feel like I'm losing him." I placed my hand on her shoulder. It felt fragile. She felt lighter than before, as if she had been losing weight without telling anyone. I asked, "Did you talk to him?" She nodded. "He said he's just stressed. He said it helps him clear his mind." "And you believe him?" Her silence was my answer. She wasn't the kind of woman who doubted without reason. She observed quietly, loved deeply, forgave easily. If she was saying this, then she had been hurting for a long time. I took her hand again. "Listen to me. Whatever is happening, we will handle it. You are not alone." She blinked back tears but didn't let them fall. She was not a woman who cried easily. She carried her pain with dignity, but even then there was something else in her eyes, something I didn't recognize at the time. A kind of fear, no, not fear, a kind of acceptance. Acceptance of something she hadn't told me yet. I would only understand later what that meant. She stayed for an hour. We talked about small things after that, food, weather, her work. We both pretended the earlier conversation didn't shake us, but it did. And when she left, I watched her walk down the driveway with slow steps, as if each one required effort. Something in my heart told me that this was not the whole story, but I pushed the thought away. We do that sometimes, don't we? Because facing the truth often hurts more than staying in the comfort of denial, even if the comfort is false. That evening, I waited for my son to come home. When he finally did, he looked tired, but not the kind of tired that comes from work. It was the tiredness of someone hiding something. "Where were you?" I asked casually. "With friends," he said. "What friends?" He hesitated. "Just some people." He didn't look me in the eye, I didn't accuse him, I didn't raise my voice. Instead, I asked the question I knew would reveal the truth. "Does your wife know where you go?" His jaw tightened. "Mama, she worries too much, I'm fine." I nodded slowly, watching him. He wasn't fine. He was drifting. And his wife was drowning silently behind him. That night, I sat alone in my room. I replayed the conversation with my daughter-in-law again and again. Something inside me kept tugging at my heart. Why did she look so tired? Why had she lost so much weight? Why did she keep holding her stomach when she thought I wasn't looking? Why did her smile tremble? I should have seen it then. But mothers sometimes get blinded by hope. We want to believe everything will be okay, so we soften every sharp edge of reality. If only I had looked a little harder. If only I had asked one more question. If only I had hugged her tighter before she left. Perhaps the story would be different today. But life doesn't give us the chance to rewrite the beginning. It only lets us move through the middle and face the ending. The next morning, I decided to visit her. I didn't tell my son. I didn't want to create tension between them or make her feel like she betrayed his trust. When I reached their home, the door was slightly open. She was sitting on the couch, wrapped in a blanket even though the house wasn't cold. Her face lit up when she saw me. "Mama, you came?" "Of course," I smiled. "You think I would?" She shook her head gently. "I just didn't want to trouble you." I sat beside her. "You never trouble me." And that's when I noticed it, her breathing. It was slow, heavy, uneven, not like someone who was just tired, but like someone who was hurting inside their body. "Are you feeling okay, Beta?" I asked. She hesitated. She looked away. She rubbed her arm as if trying to warm herself. "I'm fine," she whispered. I knew she was, but she wouldn't tell me the truth, not yet. She didn't want to be a burden, and she didn't want to paint my son as the villain. She was protecting both of us, even while she was hurting. That's the kind of heart she had. We talked for a while. She smiled in between, but her eyes kept drifting as if she was tired of holding something inside. At one point, she held her stomach and inhaled sharply. It was quick, subtle, but I noticed. "What happened?" I asked. She shook her head. "Just a little pain." "Did you see a doctor?" Her eyes lowered. "Not recently." "You should," I said firmly. "Don't ignore these things." She nodded, but half-heartedly. I didn't want to push too much, but inside me, the worry grew bigger. After an hour, I got up to leave. She walked me to the door, holding the wall lightly for support. As I stepped out, she called me softly. "Mama?" "Yes, Beta." She looked at me for a long moment, as if she wanted to say something big, something heavy. But in the end, she simply smiled. "Thank you for coming." And she closed the door gently. I stood outside for a full minute. Something was wrong, deeply wrong, but I didn't have the full picture yet, not even half of it. That part of the story would unfold in the days to come, with truths I wasn't ready for, and pain I never imagined I would witness. That night, I couldn't sleep. My mind kept replaying her tired eyes, her weak steps, her quiet sighs. And somewhere in that quiet darkness, a fear grew inside me. A fear that my son wasn't just neglecting her, a fear that while she was suffering silently, he was out there laughing, driving, talking to other girls. As if he didn't have a wife at home, fighting her own unseen battles. I didn't know then that this was only the beginning of a truth that would break my heart piece by piece, the beginning of watching a woman I loved suffer quietly, while my own son drifted farther and farther into a world where responsibility didn't matter. This was the beginning of a story I wish I never had to live. But I did, and now I'm ready to tell you the rest. After visiting my daughter-in-law that morning, something inside me changed. A small knot formed in my chest, and no matter how much I tried to distract myself, cooking, cleaning, watering the plants, nothing loosened it. I felt uneasy the way a mother feels uneasy when she senses something wrong with her child. But this time, strangely, the child I worried for was not my son. It was her. She had become like a daughter to me without even trying. She never forced closeness. She simply showed love in small ways, helping in the kitchen, bringing me flowers on my birthday, calling me for advice on dishes my son liked. She never demanded anything. Yet she gave so much. And now I felt something slipping through my fingers, like sand I couldn't hold onto, no matter how tightly I tried to close my hand. Over the next few days, I visited her again. I told my son I had errands so he wouldn't question why I kept going there. Each time I visited, she seemed a little weaker. Not dramatically, not enough for someone who didn't look closely, but I looked closely. One day her lips were pale. Another day her hands trembled slightly when she picked up a glass of water. Another day she felt too tired to even sit properly and leaned against the couch cushions like they were holding her up. She kept assuring me she was fine. "Mama, it's just stress." "Mama, I'm just tired." "Mama, it's nothing serious." But her eyes said something else. Her body said something else. And deep inside me, a voice kept whispering, "She's hiding something. She's taking care of everyone except herself. And your son is drifting farther away at the worst possible time." Meanwhile, my son, I don't know how to describe him during those days. He wasn't cold. He wasn't angry. He wasn't aggressive. He was absent, a body living in the house but not present inside it. He left early. He came home late. He stayed on his phone, he avoided conversations, he avoided eye contact, he avoided his own wife. One evening I asked him a simple question. Did you have dinner? He shrugged. I ate something outside. With who? He dismissed the question. Mama, don't start. I'm not starting anything, I said softly. I only asked. He sighed. I don't want to talk, I'm tired. But the kind of tired he carried wasn't the tiredness of working hard, it was the tiredness of running away. Running away from responsibility, from marriage, from truth, from himself. I wanted to ask him, what are you doing? Where are you going? Who are you becoming? Why are you hurting the woman who loves you more than her own health? But I didn't. Because you cannot reach someone who doesn't want to be reached. You cannot help someone who doesn't want to look in the mirror. And I didn't want to push him away by pushing too hard. One afternoon, when I visited her again, she answered the door with a smile that looked practiced. Mama, you came early today. Yes, I said. I wanted to check on you. She laughed softly. I'm okay, I promise. But as she turned to walk toward the kitchen, she held the door frame briefly like she needed support. I stepped forward. Beta, stop, sit down. She waved her hand lightly. I'm just a little dizzy. It will pass. Dizzy for how long? A few days. And you didn't tell me. Shook her head. It's nothing, I haven't eaten properly today. I sat beside her. Why not? I wasn't hungry. That wasn't true. She couldn't eat. Her appetite had changed. Her body was speaking louder than her words. I touched her forehead. It wasn't warm. Her hands were cold, but not from whether cold from weakness. I swallowed hard. You need to see a doctor. I will, Mama, soon. Promise me. She smiled again, and this time it was so soft that it almost broke me. I promise. But even then, she didn't tell me what was happening inside her body. She didn't tell me the fear she was carrying. And she definitely didn't tell me what she had heard the night before, the thing she kept hidden until the day it shattered her heart. Over the next week, I watched my son grow more distant. He left the house earlier than usual. He started dressing differently, fixing his hair more carefully, wearing cologne he hadn't used in years, buying new shirts that he called just casual. And when he got phone calls, he stepped outside to answer them. Not once, not twice, every day. I didn't want to assume, I didn't want to accuse. Mothers always want to believe the best about their children. But you cannot close your eyes forever, not when the truth begins knocking louder and louder. One night he came home very late, past midnight. His hair was messy, and he smelled like he had been in someone else's car, another perfume, another scent. I waited for him in the living room. Where were you? I asked quietly. He froze for a second. Out. With who? He rolled his eyes. Mama, stop. I'm your mother, I said softly. I'm allowed to ask. He dropped his keys on the table with a little too much force. Why do you always think something is wrong? Because something is wrong. He didn't answer. I looked into his eyes and saw something I never thought I'd see in my child. A wall. A barrier. A kind of cold detachment that comes when someone has disconnected from their own life. I asked him one more question, quietly, almost whispering. Does your wife know where you were? He looked away. I told her I was out with friends. Were you? No, he admitted, but she doesn't need to know everything. My heart dropped. Your wife is unwell, I said. She needs you, he shrugged. She'll be fine. She's not fine. Mama, he said, frustrated. She worries too much. I need space. Space. That word hit me like a slap, because he wanted space while she wanted comfort. He wanted freedom while she needed help. He wanted to escape while she was slowly collapsing inside. And the worst part, he didn't see any of it. A week later, she called me again. Mama, can you come over? Her voice sounded weaker than ever. I rushed there immediately. When I entered the house, she was sitting on the floor near the couch, holding a pillow tightly against her chest as if it was the only thing keeping her together. I knelt beside her. What happened? She didn't speak at first. Her eyes were swollen, but not from crying recently. They looked like they had cried themselves dry days ago. Beta, tell me, I whispered. I'm here. She leaned her head against my shoulder slowly, like a child seeking comfort. Mama, I heard something last night. My heart tightened. What did you hear? She inhaled shakily. He was talking to someone on the phone, a girl. My chest felt heavy. What did he say? She closed her eyes, gathering the courage. He said he wished he had married someone else. Silence. A silence that felt so heavy I could feel the weight of it pressing down on both of us. She continued, her voice breaking softly, not loud, not dramatic, just a quiet crack of a heart in pain. He said he felt trapped. He said I make him feel responsible. He said he wants to live freely again like before. I wrapped my arms around her. She didn't sob. She didn't scream. She just crumpled slowly, like a paper burning at the edges without flame, folding into itself piece by piece. Mama, she whispered, why am I not enough for him? That question, I don't think I will ever forget it, because she wasn't asking as a wife. She was asking as a human being trying to understand why love sometimes chooses to abandon the very hearts that need it most. I stroked her hair gently. "You are enough," I said softly. "He is the one who is lost, not you." She nodded, but not because she believed it. She nodded because she had no strength left to argue with kindness. After a long silence, she said something that made my blood run cold. "Mama, I didn't tell him I'm sick." I froze. I held her face gently. "Sick? What do you mean?" She hesitated, then looked at me with eyes full of quiet surrender. "I've been going to the doctor for the past month." "For what?" She breathed out slowly. "My doctor says something might be wrong with my liver. They're still running tests. I didn't want to tell him until I knew for sure." I felt my heart breaking. Not loudly, but quietly, like a soft tearing inside. "Oh, Beta," she wiped her eyes weakly. "I didn't want to burden him, he already seems so stressed." I closed my eyes for a moment. I wanted to scream. I wanted to break something, not out of anger, but out of helplessness. He was out there driving around laughing with girls, enjoying freedom, while his wife, the woman who loved him unconditionally, was sitting alone in a quiet house battling fear, battling sickness, battling loneliness. All at the same time. That night when I went home, I stood in my kitchen for a long time. I washed the same cup 3 times. I wiped the same counter again and again. My mind was spinning. I loved my son, but I loved my daughter-in-law too. And now both were hurting in different ways, but only one was hurting innocently. I wanted to confront him. I wanted to shake him. I wanted to ask him, "How can you not see what she's going through? Why are you choosing strangers over the woman who shares your home? What are you running from? What are you destroying with your own hands?" But I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat near the window until sunrise, thinking about what to do and what not to do. There are moments in life when you stand between 2 people you love and you have to decide whom to protect and whom to wake up. I knew I couldn't stay silent anymore. The next morning, I told myself, I will confront him. Gently. But firmly. I would not let him throw away his marriage, not while his wife was suffering silently, not while she was hiding her illness just to protect him, not while she loved him with her last ounce of strength. This is where the real conflict begins, where love meets truth, where a mother must choose courage. And this was only the doorway to the pain still waiting on the other side. The first cracks in their marriage didn't arrive with noise, arguments, or storms. They arrived quietly, like soft footsteps no one hears until it's too late. For years, their home had been filled with conversations, shared plans, laughter that echoed from room to room, and an effortless teamwork that made life feel lighter. But now, silence slowly took its place. Not a peaceful silence, an emotional distance disguised as calm, the kind where 2 people speak but stop hearing each other. Aisha began noticing the small things first. Nabil would come home late, exhausted, distracted, carrying the weight of his job the way people carry invisible suitcases, heavy, dragging behind them everywhere they go. She tried asking about his day, but his answers grew shorter. "Just work," he would say. "Nothing important." She tried pushing a little more, but his replies only tightened like a door being slowly shut. Aisha wasn't angry, not then. She was worried. She felt him slipping from her hands, and she didn't know why. At the same time, Nabil felt a pressure he didn't know how to express. He was afraid of being seen as weak. He was afraid of disappointing her. And that fear became the wall between them. He thought withdrawing would protect her from his stress. She thought his withdrawal meant she wasn't enough anymore. Both were wrong, but neither could say it. Their once deep conversations shrank into surface-level updates. Groceries, bills, schedules, reminders. They were still talking, but the warmth was gone. They spoke like 2 coworkers sharing responsibilities, not 2 hearts sharing a life. Aisha kept trying to reach him with patience. She cooked his favorite meals, asked if he wanted to go for a walk, offered to watch a movie together, but every attempt landed in silence or tired excuses. Nabil wasn't rejecting her, he was drowning. But drowning people don't explain, they go quiet. The strangest loneliness is the one that happens next to someone you love. Aisha felt it deeply. Nights became heavier. She would sit beside him on the couch, feeling inches away from someone who once felt like her whole world. His eyes were on his phone, his mind in another universe. She wanted to cry sometimes, not because he stopped loving her, but because she no longer knew where she fit in his emotional world. Nabil felt lonely too, but in a different way. He felt misunderstood, unseen, pressured to always be strong. He didn't realize that pushing her away wasn't strength, it was fear wearing armor. 2 people, both lonely, both hurting, both silent. This was the quiet collapse. They didn't scream. They didn't fight. They didn't tear each other apart. The damage came from slow neglect, unintentional, unspoken, unnoticed until it began to hurt. Aisha stopped asking questions. Nabil stopped giving answers. Affection became rare. Routine took over. Their home was still the same, but the emotional temperature dropped so slowly that neither realized how cold it had become. This was the beginning of the fracture, subtle, invisible, easy to ignore until it wouldn't be anymore. Aisha felt a deep shift inside her. She still performed her responsibilities with love, but something in her chest stayed heavy, like a knot she couldn't loosen. She remembered the early days of their marriage. Surprise gifts, evenings spent talking for hours, long drives, shared dreams. Now, even sharing the same room felt like standing on separate islands. Every time she tried reaching out, Nabil seemed distracted or emotionally unavailable. So her mind did what wounded minds do. It filled the silence with assumptions. Maybe I'm not important. Maybe he's happier without me. Maybe he doesn't love me the same way anymore. None of these were true, but feelings don't wait for truth, they attach themselves to fear. Her confidence began to shrink. She doubted her worth, her beauty, her presence in his life. She questioned whether she was enough, whether she was failing as a wife, whether she was losing him. Aisha never complained. She never fought. She simply folded the pain inside her like clothes placed neatly into drawers, but wounds stored quietly become storms. On the other side of the emotional distance, Nabil carried a different burden. His work stress had grown worse. New responsibilities, financial pressure, the fear of not being man enough to provide the life he promised, it all weighed on him. But instead of sharing it with her, he hid it because vulnerability felt like failure. He thought, if she sees me stressed, she'll worry. If she sees me struggling, she'll lose respect for me. I need to stay strong, even if it breaks me. So he built walls instead of bridges. When he came home, exhaustion swallowed him. He didn't have the emotional energy to talk, to laugh, to reassure her. But he didn't realize his silence was the very thing hurting her. He wasn't avoiding her, he was ashamed of his own weakness. And slowly, he convinced himself of another lie: she's better off without my problems. He loved her, but stress made him distant. Fear made him quiet. Silence made him unrecognizable. There were no villains here, just two hearts trying to survive in their own ways. Aisha wasn't clingy, she was hurting. Nabil wasn't cold, he was overwhelmed. They weren't falling out of love, they were falling out of alignment. But there's a dangerous thing about emotional distance. Once it settles in, it starts creating misunderstandings. Misunderstandings create doubt. Doubt creates insecurity. And insecurity creates stories that feel real, even when they're not. The warmth they once shared now felt like a memory fading at the edges. Aisha missed the man who used to pull her into his arms without her asking. Nabil missed the woman who used to smile at him with no heaviness behind her eyes. They were still under the same roof, still sleeping on the same bed, still calling each other my love, but the words didn't reach the heart the same way. Love was still there. Connection wasn't, and that difference was slowly breaking them. It wasn't a dramatic scene, no shouting, no confrontation. It happened one evening when Aisha asked, gently, "Are you okay? You feel far away from me." Instead of opening up, Nabil sighed and looked down. "I'm fine, Aisha," he said. "Please don't overthink." Those weren't unkind words, but the tone felt dismissive. It wasn't intentional, but it pierced her. For the first time, Aisha walked away instead of trying again. And for the first time, Nabil noticed the hurt in her eyes. That was the moment the emotional distance became real, visible, undeniable, heavy. A quiet collapse turning into a real fracture. Aisha didn't change suddenly. People rarely do. The heart cracks slowly, quietly, layer by layer. That night, when she walked away from Nabil instead of trying to explain her feelings again, she felt something she had been avoiding for months. Not physical, emotional. The kind of exhaustion that comes from loving deeply and receiving silence in return. She sat on the edge of the bed, her hands resting on her lap, and let the heaviness in her chest rise to the surface. She wasn't angry, she didn't even know how to be angry. She was simply tired. In the days that followed, something about Aisha's presence changed. Not dramatically, not intentionally, but subtly, like a soft wind turning away from a window. She became quieter, more careful with her words, less expressive with her emotions. Instead of initiating conversations, she waited for Nabil to speak. Instead of reaching out, she folded her hands together. Instead of holding on tightly, she loosened her grip. It wasn't punishment. It wasn't a game. It was self-protection. Her mind whispered the same thought again and again. Maybe it's better if I take a step back too. And for the first time, she allowed herself to consider that maybe she needed distance too, if only to stop her own heart from bleeding. Nabil didn't realize what was happening at first. He was still drowning in work, still fighting invisible battles inside his mind. But when he came home one evening and found Aisha already asleep, Her back turned to him, her breathing slow and steady. Something inside him paused. She had never slept before him, never without waiting for him, never without checking how his day went. He stood there for a long moment, watching her, feeling a deep ache in his chest. Something felt wrong. Something felt different. The next morning, her silence confirmed it. Her smile was soft but distant. Her eyes were gentle but dim. Her voice was polite but not playful. He felt a strange fear, one he didn't know how to name. He asked, "Are you okay?" She replied, "Yes, I'm fine." But the tone didn't match the words. And for the first time, he wondered if she was slipping away from him, not physically but emotionally. Relationships rarely break from one big event. They fracture from repeated small moments, the kind people dismiss as nothing. Like the day Nabil walked past her without noticing she had been waiting to have tea with him. Or the morning he missed the sadness under her smile. Or the evening she cooked his favorite dish, and he complimented it out of habit, not appreciation. Or the night she sat beside him on the couch, leaning slightly toward him, hoping he would pull her closer, but he stayed lost in his phone, unaware of the silent request. Each moment was small. Each moment was quiet. Each moment carried a tiny sting. And tiny stings, over time, become bruises that even love struggles to heal. Aisha realized something painful. You can feel lonely even while sleeping beside the person you love. It's a different kind of loneliness. Not the loneliness of being alone, the loneliness of feeling unseen. She often turned slightly toward him at night, hoping he would instinctively reach for her like he used to. But he didn't. So she turned back, tears resting behind her eyes, not falling, just waiting. Her heart whispered things she didn't want to believe. Maybe he doesn't miss me. Maybe he's happier in his own world. Maybe I'm becoming invisible. She was, but pain has a way of hiding the truth. One afternoon, he came home early. Aisha was in the kitchen, quietly cutting vegetables. She didn't hear him enter. Her shoulders were slightly slumped. Her movements slow, almost fragile. There was a silence around her, like someone trying not to feel too much. He watched her for a moment, and something inside him broke. He realized he had been so consumed with his own struggles, he hadn't seen hers. He hadn't seen how much she missed him. He hadn't seen how much she needed him. He hadn't seen how lonely she had become inside a marriage full of love but empty of attention. And then a terrifying thought hit him. What if she stops loving me the way she used to? It wasn't a dramatic thought. It was a quiet one. And quiet fears are the most painful. But before he could reach out, before he could talk to her, before he could apologize, something else entered their lives. Something unexpected. Something dark. Something that would change the course of everything. Someone from Nabil's past. And the emotional distance that once felt manageable would soon become the battlefield where everything they loved would be tested. Everything was about to shift. Everything was about to break. Everything was about to be revealed. One single sound. But it carried the weight of a storm. Aisha, unaware of anything unusual, walked over with her usual soft smile and opened the door. That's when I heard her voice freeze. A breath caught in her throat. A silence thick enough to feel from the other room. And then another voice, a woman's voice. Light, confident, familiar, too familiar. It took only 2 seconds for my heart to recognize it. Sana, the girl my son once dated, the girl who had broken his heart. The girl he had chased even when she didn't deserve him. The girl he had never fully let go of. The girl I always feared would return one day. And now she was standing at our door, smiling, as if she belonged here, as if she hadn't already done enough damage years ago. I dropped the knife and rushed out. Aisha stood frozen, holding a freshly folded towel in her hands. Sana, with perfect hair and a polished smile, looked around the house as if inspecting it. "Assalamu alaikum, Auntie," she said sweetly when she saw me. I forced a polite smile. "Wa alaikum, what are you doing here?" She placed a hand casually on her hip. "I'm in town for a while, thought I'd meet some old friends." Her tone was light, but her eyes drifted around our living room with the confidence of someone who already knew she had power. Aisha stepped aside politely, unsure what to do. Sana entered, like a breeze that pushes open a door you thought was closed. Aisha stayed near me, her fingers twisting the towel gently. She wasn't jealous. She wasn't insecure, but she could sense something, a shift, a shadow, a discomfort she couldn't name. She looked at me for guidance, but I didn't know what to say either. We were both unsettled. And then Sana asked the question that made Aisha look down at her hands. "Is Nabil home?" She said his name so easily. Too easily, my heart tightened. "No," I replied firmly. "He's at work." "Oh," she said with a disappointed pout. "Too bad, I was hoping to say hi." Aisha's eyes flickered, just for a second. That evening, Nabil returned from work, tired and distracted. I was in the kitchen when I heard the door. But before I could say anything, I heard another sound, a surprised voice. Sana, my heart dropped. Aisha was sitting on the couch arranging bills. She lifted her head at the sound of his tone. It wasn't shock. It wasn't anger. It was softness, the softness of an old memory. My pulse raced. She stepped into the living room with graceful ease, smiling as if they had met only yesterday. And Nabil, my son, he didn't step back, he didn't look uncomfortable, he didn't even look confused. He looked exactly the way I feared he would. He looked like a man remembering something dangerous. She didn't say a word, she didn't scold him, she didn't ask questions, she didn't accuse him. Aisha just watched. Her eyes didn't widen, her lips didn't tremble, her breath didn't shake. But her heart, I could see it clearly in her expression. It had taken a small step backward, a step she didn't want to take, a step she had been avoiding for months, a step that wasn't caused by jealousy but by fear, fear of losing something she fought so hard to keep, fear of becoming invisible again. Sana stayed for tea. Tea turned into dinner. Dinner turned into laughter. Laughter turned into shared memories between her and Nabil, memories Aisha wasn't part of. Aisha kept smiling politely, but every time their eyes met while talking about their past, her hands tightened around the edge of her shawl. I watched her carefully. She didn't interrupt. She didn't ask him to stop. She didn't get up from the table. She didn't even break her smile. But her silence said everything. Please don't forget I'm sitting right here. Later that night, when Sana finally left, Aisha excused herself quietly and went to the bedroom. 10 minutes passed. Then 20. Then 30. She didn't return. I found her sitting on the floor, leaning against the bed, her fingers running slowly through the hem of her dupatta. Her eyes were dry, not because she didn't want to cry, but because she was too tired to. She smiled when she saw me. Auntie, she seems nice. Her voice didn't match the words. It wasn't jealousy. It wasn't fear. It was heartbreak. Soft, quiet heartbreak. The kind that doesn't scream. The kind that only whispers. I didn't know I could still lose something I already held in my hands. He didn't even notice she was missing from the room. He didn't notice the silence. He didn't notice her absence. He didn't notice her pain. He was still in the living room, smiling to himself as if remembering something pleasant, something old, something dangerous, something that didn't include his wife. The distance that once felt repairable suddenly felt like a warning. Something was changing. Something was slipping. Something was breaking. And none of us knew how deep the fracture would go. Not yet, but soon, very soon. Sometimes heartbreak doesn't come crashing down like a storm. Sometimes it arrives like evening light, slow, gentle, unnoticed, until the room is suddenly dark. Aisha's heartbreak came quietly. Not through betrayal, not through arguments, not through accusations, but through small moments that began stacking on top of each other until the weight became almost impossible to carry. The morning after Sana's visit, Aisha woke before dawn. She prepared breakfast quietly, her movements soft and careful. She brewed Nabil's tea exactly the way he liked it, light, with just a touch of sugar. She ironed his shirt. She laid everything out on the table. From the outside, it looked like a peaceful routine, but I watched her closely. There was a stillness around her that I had never seen before. A softness that wasn't calm, it was exhaustion. Her hands moved automatically, but her heart wasn't in the room. When Nabil entered the kitchen, she straightened slightly. He smiled at his phone instead of her. "Morning," he said, barely glancing up. Aisha returned the smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Breakfast is ready." He nodded, still reading something on his screen. She stood near the counter, watching him eat, almost as if trying to measure her place in his world. He didn't notice the question in her eyes. He didn't notice her waiting for him to look at her. He didn't notice that when she finally sat down, she kept her hands under the table tightly clasped. When he finally put his phone down, she spoke softly. "Nabil, I didn't know you and Sana were still in touch." He looked surprised. "We weren't," he said quickly. "She just showed up, that's all." Aisha nodded slowly. "But you two spoke so comfortably yesterday," she said softly. "It felt like it wasn't the first time in a long while." He frowned, confused. "Aisha, please don't read too much into this. She's just an old friend." Old friend? Those words fell heavy, not because of the friendship, but because of the ease with which he dismissed her feelings. Aisha looked down at her hands. "I wasn't trying to accuse you," she whispered. "I just wanted to understand." He sighed. "Aisha, please, I'm already stressed. Don't add more pressure." And with that, he stood up, kissed her forehead mechanically, grabbed his keys, and left. Aisha stayed seated. Her tea grew cold. Her expression stayed soft, but something inside her quietly cracked. When she walked away, I found myself lingering in the doorway. I had known love. I had seen heartbreak. I had lived through both. But watching Aisha, gentle, dignified, patient, break quietly from neglect, that was a different pain. She wasn't dramatic. She didn't accuse him. She didn't suspect anything wrong. She was simply hurting because she felt unseen. And that is sometimes the deepest wound of all. That morning, I went to her and touched her shoulder lightly. "Beta, talk to me." She lifted her face with a fragile smile. "I'm fine, Auntie." Her voice was steady, too steady. I sat beside her. "You're allowed to feel hurt," I whispered. "You're allowed to ask for comfort." Her throat moved, but she forced herself to breathe normally. "I don't want to be a burden," she said softly. My heart twisted. "You are not a burden, you are his wife." She looked away, her eyes glassy though no tears fell. "I don't think he sees me that way anymore." I wanted to argue. I wanted to defend my son. I wanted to reassure her. But I couldn't speak lies, so I simply held her hand. In the days that followed, I watched their home change. Not loudly, not suddenly, but gradually. Nabil smiled at his phone more than at his wife. He left his plate unfinished more often. He stepped outside to take calls for work. He came home late, using stress as a shield. He stopped noticing when Aisha dressed up. He missed the pain behind her soft laughter. Aisha, on the other hand, cooked his favorite meals, waited up for him even when her eyes were heavy, folded his clothes carefully, tried asking gentle questions, tried not to bother him, tried to understand what was going wrong. Two people living in the same house, two people loving each other quietly, two people drifting with every passing day. And both believing the other didn't care. One evening, when Nabil came home, he placed his phone on the table and went to wash his hands. The screen lit up. Aisha wasn't the type to check phones. She respected privacy. But this wasn't snooping. It was an accident. The phone vibrated loudly. A name appeared, Sana, and beneath it a message. "I'm outside. Should I come in?" Aisha froze. Her breath left her body. Her hands trembled slightly, though she tried to steady them. She didn't open the message. She didn't touch the phone. She didn't move. But her world shifted. Not because she suspected infidelity, but because she realized something far more painful. Nabil had been sharing a world with someone else, a world Aisha wasn't invited into, and that was enough to break her slowly beating heart. When he came out of the washroom, she was sitting quietly on the sofa, staring at nothing. He didn't notice her expression. He didn't notice her silence. He didn't notice the message still glowing on the screen behind him. He just walked past. Aisha whispered one sentence under her breath, barely audible, fragile, tired. "Am I disappearing?" The next morning, she woke early as usual. The sun streamed softly through the kitchen window. The warm light didn't make her feel better, it made her feel more alone. She moved through her routine, boiling water, toasting bread, preparing his breakfast. She watched him from across the table, waiting for a glance, a word, any sign he noticed her. He didn't. Nabil ate quietly, scrolling through his phone, occasionally nodding absent-mindedly. Aisha's fingers tightened around her cup, but she didn't speak. Her silence became a quiet scream inside the room. Finally, she tried. "Nabil, yesterday, the message on your phone from Sana," she stopped, unsure if she had the courage to continue. "I just want to understand." He looked up, annoyed. "Aisha, that was nothing. Don't make a big deal out of it." She nodded, swallowing the sting. I know," she said softly, her voice trembling slightly. I feel left out, like I don't know what's happening in your life sometimes." He shook his head, frustrated. "It's just work and friends, stop overthinking." She stayed silent, her heart sank, and the distance between them stretched further, invisible but undeniable. That evening, Aisha sat alone in the living room. The house was quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator and the occasional car passing outside. She held her hands in her lap, staring at the floor. Slowly, the truth began to sink in. This wasn't just about a message. It wasn't just about a friend. It was about being invisible in the life of someone she loved deeply. She realized that love alone wasn't enough if it wasn't met with attention, care, and respect. Tears didn't fall. She didn't cry. She only let a deep, tired sigh escape, as if carrying the weight of her marriage in one breath. She picked up a notebook from the shelf and began writing, words she couldn't say aloud. "Nabil, I feel like I'm losing you, not because of anger or fights, but because I'm fading from your life. I love you, but I can't live in the shadows anymore. Please notice me." She paused, pressed the pen to her lips, and then closed the notebook. She knew she couldn't send it. She didn't want to accuse, she didn't want to fight. She just wanted to be seen. Over the next few days, every small moment became a reminder of her loneliness. He laughed at jokes she didn't hear. He mentioned friends she didn't know. He went out without telling her. He didn't ask how her day was. Aisha tried not to react. She cooked, cleaned, smiled, and waited. But inside, a quiet storm raged, a storm no one saw and one that wasn't loud but relentless. One afternoon, she called me. Her voice was calm but fragile. "Auntie, I feel like I'm disappearing. I don't know what to do." I listened. I didn't interrupt. Sometimes words aren't enough. Sometimes being heard is the only medicine. After a pause, she continued. I still love him, but I don't know if he loves me the same way anymore. Maybe he never really did. I felt her pain as if it were my own. Beta, love isn't only about feelings. It's about being present, noticing each other, holding space for each other. You deserve to be seen. Her quiet sob came through the phone. I just want him to see me just once. And in that moment, I realized Aisha wasn't asking for a fight. She was asking for recognition. And that recognition was slowly slipping away. That night, she stood by the window. Rain had started to fall, soft and rhythmic. She watched the droplets race down the glass, each one reflecting a little light. Her reflection stared back at her, tired, small, but still dignified. She whispered to herself, maybe he doesn't see me, but I still see myself. It was a small, fragile hope. A reminder that even when others fail to notice, you cannot let yourself disappear. That morning, the house felt emptier than usual. Nabil left for work without his usual good morning, and Aisha didn't chase him. She went about her routine, sweeping, cooking, tidying. The silence felt heavier, like the walls were pressing closer. She noticed the small details that used to go unnoticed: a jacket thrown carelessly on the sofa, a cup left on the counter, the faint smell of another woman's perfume lingering in the air. Each small sign whispered the truth she had been afraid to face. During lunch, her phone rang. It was Sana. Aisha's hands froze. She answered, voice steady but careful. Hi, yes. There was a pause. Sana's voice was light, almost cheerful. I just wanted to check if Nabil can come by later. We're meeting some friends. Aisha's heart sank. She forced a polite reply. Sure, he's probably busy, but thanks for letting me know. She hung up and sat down. The room felt colder now. She couldn't shake the feeling that her home, her life, her marriage were all slowly being taken away in small, silent ways. That evening, Aisha stayed in the living room while Nabil went out. She sat on the couch, wrapped in a shawl, staring at the window. Raindrops traced lazy patterns on the glass. Her thoughts kept returning to the notebook she had written in part 8. She thought about sending it, but the fear of his reaction stopped her. She didn't want an argument. She didn't want more distance. She just wanted him to see her, to notice her pain, to care. But she knew that waiting had its limits. Love alone could not fill the growing emptiness. The next day, she tried again, softly. Nabil, can we talk for a moment? He looked up from his phone, sighing. What is it now, Aisha? Her voice was calm, measured. I just want to understand why it feels like we're drifting apart. He hesitated, then shrugged. It's nothing, don't overthink things. But the tone, it wasn't care. It wasn't love. It was dismissal. And that simple shrug cut deeper than any harsh word could. Aisha felt her heart tighten, the first cracks of resignation forming. She realized that she had been hoping for something that might never return. That night, she wrote in her notebook again, I can't keep waiting for someone to see me if he doesn't want to. I need to protect myself, even if it hurts. Tears threatened to fall, but she held them back. She didn't need to cry to understand. Her strength was quiet, but it was growing. She began imagining a life where she was seen, valued, and loved, not ignored or dismissed. It was frightening to think about, but also liberating. Over the next few days, subtle signs became impossible to ignore. Messages from Sana that seemed casual but felt intimate. Nabil spending more time away than usual. Laughter and jokes she wasn't part of. Each moment was a reminder. The man she loved was slowly making room for someone else in his life. Aisha didn't shout. She didn't cry out. She watched quietly, learning, observing, and finally accepting that the truth was unavoidable. Sitting by the window one night, she whispered, I can't change him, but I can change how I let this affect me. She wrapped herself in her shawl, feeling the warmth against her skin. For the first time in weeks, she allowed herself a small smile, not for him, not for anyone else, but for herself. It was a tiny act of courage, a first step toward reclaiming her life, her dignity, and her heart. She was in the kitchen, preparing tea, when she saw the message. It was from Sana. Casual words, innocent on the screen, but the implication made her stomach drop. Her hands trembled slightly as she set the cup down. The room felt heavy, the air thick with unspoken things. For a moment, she wanted to shout, to call, to demand answers. But then she remembered the quiet strength she had been nurturing in part 9. She took a deep breath, letting it fill her chest. No yelling, no pleading, just acknowledgement. This is it, she thought. I see the truth now, and I can't unsee it. She didn't follow him. She didn't beg him to explain. She simply moved to the living room, sat by the window, and watched the rain slide down the glass. It was symbolic in a way she couldn't quite explain. The rain washed over the world outside, just as she would wash away the fear, the hurt, the illusions she had carried for so long. Her heart ached, but differently now. Not from confusion, not from betrayal, but from acceptance. She realized she had a choice, to stay trapped in sadness or to honor herself, her dignity, and her life. That evening, she spoke aloud to the empty room, almost like therapy. I loved him. I tried, I hoped, but it's not my fault that he chose otherwise. My love doesn't disappear because someone else fails to cherish it. Tears came, soft and unashamed. They weren't cries of despair. They were purification, release. Every tear was a thread breaking free from the weight she had carried for so long. She looked in the mirror and saw a woman who had been hurt but was not broken. Her eyes were tired, yes, but they were also steady. Her posture was quiet, but there was strength in her shoulders. The next morning, Aisha did something small but monumental. She packed away the letters, the gifts, the reminders that tied her to a life that no longer existed. She cleaned her home not to erase him, but to reclaim it as her own sanctuary. She went for a walk in the garden, breathing deeply. The sun was soft, the breeze gentle, and for the first time in weeks she felt a spark of peace. It wasn't happiness yet, not the kind that comes from others, but contentment. A contentment rooted in truth, clarity, and self-respect. Aisha realized she had been waiting for someone else to validate her worth, but now she understood that her value had never depended on anyone else. It was always within her. Her love, her care, her patience, they were gifts but not currencies to be spent on someone who didn't appreciate them. She whispered to herself, I will love, I will live, and I will honor my heart. No one can take that away. That evening, she sat by the window again, a cup of tea in hand. The rain had stopped, leaving the world fresh and bright. She smiled softly, the kind of smile that carried both sorrow and wisdom. She had lost much, yes, but she had also found herself. And in that quiet, reflective moment, she understood the truth of life. Sometimes love means letting go. And sometimes letting go is the most powerful act of love you can give to yourself. Aisha's story doesn't end with shouting, blame, or anger. It ends with quiet reflection, self-respect, and the strength to move forward. Her heart remains open, but now it is guarded with wisdom. She has learned that peace is not found in others, but in the acceptance and care of one's own soul.